From the RT, Israel preparing military option against Iran. Israel's military is preparing a possible strike against Iran, the country's media has reported, citing defense and diplomatic sources. Tel Aviv has already notified the U.S. of its plans, facing no veto on such preparations. Jeremiah 49 verse 20. Therefore hear the counsel of the Lord Yahweh, that he had taken against Edom, and his purposes, that he had purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. Jeremiah 50 verse 45. Therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord Yahweh, that he had taken against Babylon, and his purposes, that he had purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. Shalom, all praises, blessings, glories, honors, and powers be unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Racha Kodash. Double honors to my apostles and elders of Great Millstone who have taught me this truth, as well as men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy, to the elect of the nation of Israel, whom are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the sea line of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom are scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. To you I say Shalom and Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai Ratazah. This lesson is edifying and informative. In the news, Israel is preparing military options against Iran. Again, this article reads, Israel's military is preparing a possible strike against Iran. And according to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 49, verse 20, and 50 and 45, Israel represents and is the least of the flock. And the ones whom are inhabiting our land as we speak are the Edomites, the so-called Caucasians of the Edomite tribe of Amalek. They are also and have been known as throughout history as Khazars, whom are Edomites. They are the least of the flock that shall draw them, which is referring to America, Babylon the Great, out where? Into the Middle East, to become a guard unto themselves, because they will attack Iran, which will initiate the Third World's woe. After, key emphasis on after, the mark of the beast, which is the RFID microchip, has been mandated globally, because that is a extremely major prophecy that must and will come to pass before the Third World's woe begins, followed by the destruction of America, and then at the same time the return of our Lord Yahweh Shai, because the Lord is not a man that he should lie. And once Israel attacks Iran, and Iran retaliates against Israel, that is when America will be drawn out by reason of Israel and become a guard unto them. And then Russia, according to the prophecy written of in the book of Ezekiel 38th chapter, will then become a guard unto Iran and its allies. All these things are biblical prophecy concerning the prophecy of the third world woe, which will happen after the prophecy of the mark of the beast has come to pass. It reads on to say, Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz told U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin about preparations for a potential military strike against the country's arch nemesis, Iran, during his visit to the U.S. And last year they had assassinated Iran's chief military general, Qasem Soleimani, followed by, later on in the same year or the year following, which is this year, their chief nuclear scientist slash physicist. And Iran has not retaliated ever since against America and Israel. In fact, all they've been doing is enriching their uranium and their nuclear development procedures. Multiple Israeli outlets reported on Saturday Gantz met top U.S. officials, including Lord and Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Thursday. U.S. prepares other options against Iran's nuclear program. The defense minister told Americans that he had instructed the military to prepare for a military option, a senior secretary source said, as quoted by Israel's Army radio. The same source claimed that while Tehran was close to producing enough fissile material for a single nuclear bomb, it would not push through the threshold because it understands the gravity of such a step. And they may say this, however, it will not be so for biblical prophecy's sake, because the Lord has been putting it into the minds of these different nuclear scientists around the globe, beginning with their country's leaders, to use their country's economic wealth towards the researches and developments of weapons of mass destruction, chiefly intercontinental ballistic missiles, in preparation for the third world war, because the Lord has put it in their minds and their spirits to do so, because they understand that we are in the season of war. For to everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the sun. In Joel chapter 3, verse 9, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Why? Because according to the book of Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, the 1st verse, and then followed by the 8th verse, we are in a season of war and not love and not peace. We are in a season of hate and war. In fact, our Lord Yahushua had prophesied that in these days the love of many would wax cold, in the book of St. Matthew, the 24th chapter. And because iniquity, which is sin upon sin, which is transgression of the laws of the Lord, according to the book of James chapter 1 verse 4, the love of many shall wax cold. Prepare war, wake up the mighty men. Prepare for what war? Let's find out. Revelation chapter 11 verse 14, not 14 verse 11. The second woe is past, World War II has passed, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And third woe which cometh quickly will be a war that will be fought with burning and fuel of fire. Isaiah 9 and 5, for every battle of the warrior is fought with confused noise and garments rolled in blood. So When we examine the wars of old, they were fought between two nations arraying their troops, their warriors, on vast battlefields. And they would be equipped with swords and spears and staves and bows and lances, armors, and these different sorts of things. And they would engage in battle, and they would cut off each other's heads, arms, legs, thrust each other through, and so on and so forth. Just like in the movie 300, the movie Braveheart, and movies of the like, which shows us examples of how ancient wars were fought. But this, the thorough as well, which cometh quickly, and is the reason why these nations have been beating their plowshares into swords and their pruning hooks into spears, and preparing for war, shall be with burning and fuel of fire by reason of the ICBM nuclear fire that will be coming from those ICBM nuclear missiles. Malachi chapter 4 verse 1, for behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven. And what day is that referring to? The day of our Lord Yahushua's return, when he will return to render his anger with fury and his rebuke with flames of fire through the ICBM nuclear missiles, which are the weapons of the Lord's indignation, and also through the concentrated rays of light in the form of laser beams that will be shot forth from the so-called UFOs, which are the chariots of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. For by fire and by his sword, as it is written, will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many. And Jeremiah 25 verse 33 is a precept to that. And all the proud, who is the proud? Esau, Edom, 2/3 of the nation of Israel, and the heathen nations. Yea, and all that do wickedly in terms of living their lives contrary to the laws of Yahweh Bahasham Yahushai, committing adultery, idolatry, sodomy, bestiality, eating abominable foods. These are all examples of doing wickedly, in which those that do will become stubble, for they shall burn as an oven in the day of the Lord's judgment, in the day of his indignation, which means righteous anger, shall be stubble, and the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch, because nothing will be left in this land after the Lord has completely melted it. Psalms 21 verse 9, thou shalt make them as a fiery oven in the time of thine anger. The Lord Yahweh shall swallow them up in his wrath, and the fire shall devour them. So the fire shall devour them. The fire gonna burn them up, eat them up, blaze them up, chew them up. And so now let's go back to the book of Joel, the 3rd chapter, the 9th verse. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, the heathen nations. Prepare war. Now we understand what war that is referring to. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Draw near where? Joel chapter 3, verse 2. I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, which in the Hebrew, Jehoshaphat is Yahweh Shaphat, which means Yahweh's judgment. Shaphat means judgment in the Hebrew, which is located in the Arabian Peninsula, that is in the Middle East, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, because our Lord will make his second return in the east, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And so now we know where they will draw near to. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. And so plowshares and pruning hooks are instruments of agriculture, which is a country's modern day wealth, which they will use towards the research and development of weapons of mass destruction. That is why it says that they are going to beat it. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, into instruments of cruelty. Let the weak say, I am strong. Let countries such as Iran, which now possess and is in the process of possessing even more nuclear capabilities, say that they are strong. Let North Korea say that they are strong. India, Pakistan, countries that initially never had nuclear missiles, but now do to level the playing field, so to speak, say that they are strong. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh, or the mighty ones, the angels. You can read that in the book of 2 Ezra, the 13th chapter. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. What comes to mind? Revelation, the 14th chapter. Come, get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow. Amos, the 9th chapter, also comes to mind. For their wickedness is great. Multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of the Lord Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining, which means that the Lord is going to cut off all wisdom and knowledge in that day and in leading up to that day, because there will be the famine of the word. And also, the heavens are going to be blocked out by reason of the chariots. Okay? A day of darkness, a day of gloominess. And so now let's go back to the article. There was no veto, the source said, as quoted by the Jerusalem Post. But before reading on, I'd miss the first few paragraphs above. It reads, the same source claimed that while Tehran was close to producing enough fissile, well, I'd already read that, Salakia. Maybe I didn't read the second paragraph. That states a separate diplomatic source told Israeli media that the announcement did not meet any objection from the American officials. So they're basically with it. The paragraph above reads on to say, while Israel has repeatedly accused Iran of seeking to obtain nuclear weaponry, Tehran has consistently rejected such allegations, maintaining that its nuclear program served solely civilian purposes. There was no veto, the source said, as quoted by the Jerusalem Post. During his U.S. visit, Gnatz expressed hopes of deepening dialogue and cooperation with Washington when it comes to Iran, as well as to enhance the joint military readiness to face Iran and to stop its regional aggression and nuclear aspirations. And what we are reading here is basically prophecy that is to come after the mark of the beast has been mandated, after that prophecy has been fulfilled. And in leading up to that, there will be wars and rumors of wars. The Lord is pretty much setting the stage, putting the pieces together. Because once that chip has been mandated, everything will begin to move quick. Remember, the ancient Babylonians had fell in one night. It reads on to say, while Austin appeared to be less warlike, he said Washington was concerned about Iran's failure to show constructive diplomatic engagement, warning that U.S. President Joe Biden was preparing to turn to other options in dealing with Tehran. U.S. and Israeli mole drills to strike Iran's nuclear sites. Shortly after the Lord Gnatz meeting concluded, White House Press Secretary Jen Pelosi doubled down on U.S. readiness to explore other options. Given the ongoing advances in Iran's nuclear program, she quotes the president has asked his team to be prepared in the event that diplomacy fails. We must turn to other options that requires preparations, Paskey said, end quote. She said the options might include additional measures to further restrict Iran's revenue-producing sectors, yet avoided explicit mention of military intervention. The hostile rhetoric comes amid the recent resumed Vienna talks, designed to revive the landmark 2015 Iranian nuclear deal, which is going to come to naught once again, officially known as the JCPOA. The negotiations, however, have not gone any further, with Tehran continuing to demand that Washington lifts its oppressive sanctions in full. The JCPOA agreement effectively fell apart after the then U.S. President Donald Trump unilaterally walked away from it back in 2018, accusing Tehran of somehow violating the spirit of the deal. Since then, Washington has reimposed old sanctions and introduced new measures against Tehran. The Islamic Republic has gradually suspended its JCPOA obligations, ramping up uranium enrichment and expanding its nuclear program through what is known as nuclear cities, as it had been priorly reported. There was also another article of Iran's response to Israeli drill rumors, which, Lord's willing, I'll do in another lesson. Now, this is back in Jeremiah. Chapter 49, verse 20. Therefore, hear the counsel of the Lord Yahweh that he hath taken against Edom. Who's Edom? The wicked. Malachi chapter 1, verse 4. Today they are known as the so-called Caucasian race. And his purpose is that he had purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Modern-day Teman is America, Babylon the Great. Surely the least of the flock, which is Israel, shall draw them, which is America, out where? To the valley of Jehoshaphat, into the Middle East, to become a guard unto themselves. When that happens, Russia is going to become a guard unto Iran, according to the book of Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. And its allies, surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them, because the Lord will obliterate that land of its uncleanness as we speak, because right now the land of Israel is inhabited by Edomites, by abominable people. They have gay parades and all these different things, man. Therefore Jeremiah 50 verse 45. So they're going to be obliterated right along with America, Babylon the Great, by way of nuclear fire, according to biblical prophecy. Jeremiah 50 verse 45. Therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord Yahweh that he had taken against Babylon. So Edom and Babylon, they're synonymous. The word Babylon means confusion. And America is a bitter land of confusion, because America practices and habituates the ancient manners and customs of all the previous kingdoms, amalgamated into one. That's why it's called Babylon. And his purpose is that he had purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Modern-day Chaldeans are the Edomites. They're witches, they're warlocks that practice sorcery and different forms of witchcrafts and enchantments. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. So I pray this lesson was edifying to the elect and informative. Lord's willing, until the next, I say shalom to the elect.